by her father. And the girls had some intellectual problems, and they made the story to her teacher. And the teacher was very, I will say, brave to go to the principal of the school, and they went to the Center of Social Welfare, and they all went to the police. And it begins. I will say they were interrogated in the police office. They were interrogated into the social welfare. They were interrogated by a psychologist. And then on the 5th or 6th time, they have to come to the court. And on the beginning, I say no, they don't want to go to my courtroom. I will make, at that time, I had a special person in my department for juveniles, and this person was social pedagogue, and I asked her, we have to ask someone, for example, the psychologist, who is finished, and we were very happy at that time, Gordana Buljan-Flander, as you heard, the director of the Center for Children in Zagreb. She was at that time psychologist in the Hospital for Children. And she finished education in United States and forensic interview. And she allowed 2 young psychologists to come in United States to finish also a little bit of these exams about the forensic interview. So we were happy that it happens in all together in the same time. The psychologists and the lawyers, we agree that it will be nice to put this girl in a special room in the court, and that the police officers helped us with the cameras. We had 2 cameras. It was small camcorders with some special lines between our courtroom and this small room. And we made it that the girls were not in the same courtroom as the perpetrator and defense lawyer and all the counsel and me as a judge. They were separate in the small room, more child-friendly, only with this psychologist who were educated by Americans about forensic interview. And it was the first forensic interview in Croatia. And at that time, I asked my colleagues, the judges from my court and from the County Court of Zagreb, to come to hear such hearing that we had in County Court of Zagreb. And some of them, they were very delighted, and they said, that's marvelous, because the victims were not in the same room, and they were not they don't have re-victimization. And that was nice. At that time, we were beginning to ask if we can change the law. The victim's right is just beginning, that all we have to think about that. If we are not all thinking about the victims have the right, they don't have a right. And if they don't know about their rights, they can't say, can I have something that they are not aware? So it must be the idea from the judge, or maybe from the prosecution, or maybe from the police station or police officers. It must be thinking about that who can ask the question to the children. It must be an expert who is taught how to ask the question to the child. And it must be a separate room for the children, not allowed to defense lawyer, not allowed the perpetrator, not allowed the council of judges to be present in this room. What is the equipment? Equipment is now very normal. I will say in 2018, it's only 2 cameras, 1 projector, and 1 screen that you can see and hear the face of the child. And sometimes this face of the child can be much more visible than you have the child in front of you. And what is the rights for victims, children? They have right not to be scared, not to have a problem how to talk about it, not to think what will happen with them because they are not secure. And on the other hand, right for defendant is to ask the question. But if he or she as a defendant and as a perpetrator are on the other side in the courtroom, they can ask all the questions on the end when the story of the child is finished. They can ask the question, and me as a president of the council, as a judge, I can allow these questions through the microphone and through the speaker to my expert, and my expert can ask this question to the children. So the Strasbourg, the Court for Human Rights always say that the rights for perpetrators and the rights for victims must be in balance. So if they are in balance, there is no problem to have all the things to the children, to put them in a separate room, in a separate place with the educated person who can ask them a question. At that time, in 2000, it wasn't in the law. It wasn't against the law. But in my decision, it was when the child was asked to have some answers in the separate room and with educated person, the Supreme Court said nothing against it. They said nothing, it's good, but they said nothing against it. So we were on the good track. And after that, it was the changing of the act. The changing of the act was Criminal Procedure Act in 2002. Then we put in this act that the children can be examined with the assistance of psychologists, social pedagogue, social worker, or other expert person. And the examination must be the children as a witness and the children victims in the other room with video and sound recording, and without the presence of the judge and the parties in the room. So in this separate room, child-friendly room for children, must be only the expert and the child. And the camera made the video, so on the hearing we are just recording their examination, and we are asking the prosecution and the other side, defense lawyer, can you hear this witness? Is there any problem about this witnessing? And they can make their observation after that. At that time, in 2002, it was also changing the Act of Juvenile Courts, because the Juvenile Courts Act is, I was introducing you on the beginning that one part of this act is only about the victims' children. And that's in this legislation, we have also the part about the victims. Our legislation, they tell that the judges and the prosecutor must witness under the 14 and victim under the 16 must go in a separate room with assistance with a social pedagogue and expert of the court, and to record just this witnessing on the hearing. But as judges and the prosecutors, after that we have introduced that and educate them in one program of UNICEF, we all agreed that the Convention on the Rights of the Child said that the child is the person under the 18. So we just make a conclusion that all the children, when they are witness or when they are victims, they have their right to be in the special room and witnessing with assistance of some expert. It was the practice, and after this practice, we put that into the act. After this, because the Ministry of Justice at that time was really, I will say, really good hearing between judges, prosecutors, and Ministry of Justice. It was just 2 years after that we had all equipment on 5 or 6 county court in Zagreb, in Split, in Osijek, in Pula, in Rijeka, and then after that in 2008, I think, we make broader, then the 15 county court in Croatia had all the equipment that they can video record all the witnessing of the children, and they have their special rooms for children. So equipment were cameras, projectors, headphones, microphones, and of course the most important education of the experts who can ask the question to the children. And in 2010, the UNICEF made a lot of rooms for children in the courts where the rooms were not made, so they also helped us. UNICEF, Ministry of Justice, prosecution, they all agreed that we have to help the children when they are victims and they are not the normal witnesses or victims on the court. What is child-friendly justice? They said it's the special place that we can talk with the children or we can hear them in some special places. This is the room on my county court. It's not really child-friendly because if you want to go to their room, you just pass through all the corridors that you are passing as, for example, perpetrator. You can meet the perpetrator in front on the street or maybe on the steps when you are going into our court, or maybe you have just go through all the corridor of our policemen who are asking you and your mother and your father, just put everything out of your pocket. What do you have in your bag? That's not child-friendly. In some investigation about what the children say about the courts, they say that they think if they are asked to go to the court, they are guilty. They did something wrong because we are, as an adults, we are asking them to come to the court. So maybe the court is not the best place for the children, but better place not to go to the courtroom, to go to the room for the children. So the most important in all things that we are thinking about the children is to have educated persons who can talk and ask the child to tell the story, what happened, and to ask the right questions, not to put the person in something, I will say, bad position. I mean that in healthy category. Maybe after that the child will be ill. After that the child will have a lot of problem, and sometimes the children said, if was finished on the court, I think I've done everything I have to do on this earth. so I can go. That's something very bad, and we are not obliged to put the children on their, I will say, on their head. So a lot of things that the adults cannot help with such things and such memories about what to do after that. So it must be an expert on the court, maybe not on the court, expert in the local community, expert in hospital, expert psychologist, but this expert must know how to do all the things by protocol, how to examine the child, and by protocol, how the forensic interview can go on the beginning, in the middle, and on the end. The judges, the prosecutors, and the lawyers have to have specialization because they have to know how to ask the question. But the most important persons here are judges, because all the questions are going through the judge. The judge can allow, or the judge can say, no, this question is forbidden question because of that and that. But the judge must know everything, what is in the Convention on the Rights of the Child and all directives that we have, that they have the rights of the children in European Union. So they have to be learned. But this learning is not only once they learned and that's all. All our laws are just going up in another, I will say, street. So we have to learn every day. Every day is going something else. Sometimes we have some new pharmacology, we have some new ideas how to help the children. So we have to know that as a teachers, as a judges, as a psychologist, as a social worker. Your work is not good if you think that you finished your high school and that's the end. It's not. It's just the beginning. So what and how to go under the 2011? It was the Act for Juvenile Courts, and we changed it because we thought that these cases are not going very urgent. For example, the girl said, my father is a sexual abuser and he abused me last month, and all the procedure begins in the police. Then the police investigate all the neighbors, another parent, teachers, another children, and all the things that they can get, medical examine or something like that. After that, the prosecution are thinking, what will we do? We will have investigation about that, okay. And then the children is waiting. After he or she tells the teacher or the person of the trust that something happened, to the first real judge examine, or I will say a judiciary examine, maybe it's in 2 months, it's very good, but maybe in 6 months, maybe in 1 year, and after 1 year, the child, when she or he was 6, after 1 year, he's 7. Does he know every detail about, for example, what kind of robe did you have at that time? It was red? No, it was yellow or green. And where was the pistol? Under the cupboard? On the cupboard. Have it happened after the school or maybe before the school? Do you have the school in the morning or do you have the school in the afternoon? Do you know what happened yesterday? Do you know what happened the year ago? It was also May. It wasn't 2019, it was 2018. But do we as an adult can say what happened the year before? And sometimes when we are talking with the children, we are asking them, what happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago? Can you tell me how often, for example, your father or your grandmother or your grandfather do it to you? How many times? 10, 12, 100. I do remember my girl, she was only 10, and she said 100 times. And my prosecutor said, okay, it was 100 times. And I said, no, dear prosecutor, you can't say it's 100. It's just the number that the children are talking about. They're talking about 1,000, 100, 400. It's nothing. It doesn't mean really a number. So we have to know about it. What kind of girl or boy are talking about the numbers, about the meters, about the time, for example. Always was the question how long it was one action. We don't know the long of the action. 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 45 minutes. Maybe sometimes when it's horrible, you think it was 1 hour, but it wasn't. It was 5 minutes. So we have to know all these things. This improving our act for juvenile court was improving that the police station have to tell the state attorney in 3 days that something happened bad with the girl or with the boy. For example, the boy is the victim, and then the state attorney or the prosecutor have to put some question to the judge in 3 days that the judge can have a hearing with the child. So you see, we put in the law that this urgent must go in very small, I will say, small pieces of days, of weeks, of months. It's not that the child in Croatia said something happened to me and the first hearing is in 9 days. No, it's in 1 month, but that's good. So what is in new Criminal Procedure Act in 2013? It's also the rights of the victims because of directive of the victims in 2012 from European Union. We have to put that some rights for the victims in our national law. So we put that in Criminal Procedure Act. It is that every child have the right to have a lawyer, but the lawyer is on the expense of budget funds. So no parent, no child, of course, but no parent of the child or the caregiver of the child is paying about this lawyer, who is the lawyer defending whom? Victim, not the other side. All the personal data must be confidential, and of course exclusion of public. We had always when are the cases against the children. And the child can say, I would like to go to my examination with the person of trust. It means that he can say, it can be my mother, who is not involved, for example, my teacher, my oldest cousin, but it must be the person under the 18. What is the right of the child? The best interest of the child. And what is the best interest of the child? It's so, I will say, dreamily to say that we do understand every child and that every child in every case have the same best interest. No. It's only the interest that we are thinking about this concrete procedure and concrete child. If he or she is 8 and something happened to the child, what is the best interest of the child? to be secure, to be in the home, in a safe home. If you are not thinking about the safe place, you can't ask the child, can you tell me a story about it? Because he's not safe. And you can't understand why the child said nothing happened. It's because the child wants to survive. And we, as an adults, we have to think the best to the child, to secure the child, then ask the child the question, what happened? What is child-friendly house? Child-friendly house is, for example, in Croatia, you know, the Center for Children, and this is something that I will say safe environment. The place that we can put the child and an expert in the house, not in the courtroom, where all the children are together. And for example, the children are here in this center because they are going to learn something, because they have some problems in school. They are here with their parents. The walls and the rooms and all the house is just equipped to be child-friendly. For example, some hospitals for children is child-friendly. For example, some social welfare centers are child-friendly. I will say some bibliotheques for children are also child-friendly. So if you don't have a child-friendly house, don't matter. It's just your decision that you can make some place to be child-friendly and to put just some things, 2 cameras, microphones, and that's very small equipment that you can make all the hearing, that they can go through the video, but also to allow the prosecution and defense lawyer and the perpetrator to ask the question. What is the best thing to put your money in your country? I will say to invest in experts for children. For example, social pedagogues, social workers, psychologists, and other expert person who can ask the best question for the children, who can prepare the child for investigation, who can be in the position to tell the judge, prosecution, and other side this child needs something after this examination, or to be in the hospitals where you have psychologists, psychiatrists for children, and you are not asking if I have done everything that was in my, I will say, in my way that I can say that the child will be safe. If I'm sure that the child is safe, I'm sure that I will have a good story for prosecution and for me as a judge. So, what's the best? Specialization for all. Police, prosecutors, judges, lawyers, and of course, experts. On the court, out of the court, doesn't mind, but experts who can ask the question, who can lead and have a forensic interview by protocol, and then you can finish the case very early and not to disturb the child to tell the story once more. Thank you for your attention. I would like to hear from you some questions and to answer.
Thank you very much for an amazing presentation and an amazing overview of how this has developed in Croatia. It is a very interesting story, and I was listening focused for all this time. I imagine our participants the same. It's just it's amazing to hear what progress you have made, and the message that you stressed out a few times throughout this webinar is the responsibility of people working with children in different positions to constantly think how the process they put children through affects them and whether there is anything they can do to improve it. Because it's not possible that a child or a parent requests a separate room with cameras, because that would be better for children. No parent would dare to do this in such a situation, and they are not even aware that they can do this. It's not up to them, so it's up to people, not only judges, but everybody else who works with children, to constantly think and just reflect upon, is there anything else we can do to make this better and more child-friendly and more effective? Because in the end, it's not only, I also like the comment what Matea mentioned. It is on one side, no, it is important to protect child rights and to make sure that this process is as traumatic, as little traumatic as possible for children, as you described. They, you know, as a witness, you go through, or a victim, you go through many questionings and have to detail the abuse that happened to many people you don't know, which is not friendly at all. But it also helps the people, it helps the judge, it helps the defendant, because it's possible to get more accurate information, because children are not under stress. They don't feel like they should say wrong things. So basically it also helps the process. It helps the whole everybody involved practically, because you can get better quality of testimony, which is important also for the whole process in the court. So just I think this is one of the messages that everybody can take from this. Now I will just go through some of the questions that we have here, but now we will have maybe 5 more minutes to go through some of the things participants are interested to learn. So the first question is from Ditmir, and the question is, I was wondering if we can have the presentation at the end of this webinar. Yes, the presentation will be on the webinar page after the session ends. So in this web link section, you can see it's written ChildHub webinars. If you click there, it will take you directly to our webinar page, and there you can find this webinar and download the presentation. I think today, by later in the afternoon, it will be available, but the safest for you is to check tomorrow morning, then you will definitely be able to find it there. Then we have a question from Maud asking, what is the knowledge on disability those experts, social workers, psychologists need to have? Is there a requirement or a training?
Well, I will say that it's a multidisciplinary seminar, or I will say not one seminars, just seminars about all the problems that you have, and you have to be trained how to put these questions and trained on your, I will say, some imagination cases, and then with your trainer to train you what's was the best or the bad question that you ask the child. You have to be, for example, on the beginning, all the rights of the child, the knowledge, but you have to learn how to ask the question, and then to be sure after you made some investigation and some cases your own, you have to be supervised. So not only one education, but supervising, and after the following, I will say better following some education that must have some expert.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I see here a question from Ditmir, and I was typing the answer. So for Ditmir,
But I can see.
and then we can see if we can connect you with some of the people who have resources in Albanian. But maybe it's a good question also for the speaker. Ditmir said that Ditmir is from Albania and works as a social worker in the police station. But I quote, I can see from my side that I need some more specialization. If you can help me with some addresses or resources. So Alana, if you are aware of anything, you can share with us later via email and we can forward it any resources that can be useful. But also, if you write to us, we can also see if we can connect you with our partners in Albania. Maybe it is available in a local language as well. So this is one of the things.
Their Judicial Academy, I was in Albania last year, and I'm familiar with the problem in police in Albania. And the Judicial Academy and the Police Academy told me that they will have some resources from outside of Albania, and they will taught the policemen and the judges and the prosecutors. I would like to know also what happened that in the Judicial Academy in Albania and in Police Academy, but I am very happy that I can share a lot of addresses that they can have some, I will say, seminars or some persons who can educate.
Excellent, thank you very much. We will put those resources which is possible on the webinar page. So anybody else who is interested, you can go and see if you find anything important. On the note on what you were discussing before about the knowledge on the previous question, I see here Matea's comment that actually supervision is also very important when we talk about the knowledge and specialties that experts should have. So indeed, it's something that we shouldn't overlook. All right, well, because our time is up, if you have any further questions, write to us on this same email, info@childhub.org, and we will forward your questions to the judge, Lana, and then you will get your answer. Thank you very much, Lana, for a very exciting presentation and for this amazing overview of the process. And thank you all for staying with us for more than 1 hour and listening to the webinar today. If you would like to get a certificate of attendance, the same email, info@childhub.org, just drop us a sentence that you attended a webinar today and you would like to have a certificate of attendance, and then we will send you one. Before we go, there is a poll we have for you. Just make sure that you click and tell us how you liked it before you tune off. Wish you all a very nice afternoon. Once again, many thanks, and looking forward to our future projects together.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everybody, and have